We are back on It's Always Game Day in Cincinnati. Lindsay Patterson, Mike Santagata here. Mike, how are you?
Doing pretty great. I went to a dog's birthday party on Sunday at a brewery. It was fun. And now my wife wants to watch like all the Oscar movies, Best Picture movies. I picked the 1 to 2 that I'm interested in. I mean, like I'd watch more. I just busy, and so she's watching The Brutalist right now, which
Okay.
sounded super interesting to me. And then I looked at the run. I was like, oh, 3.5 hours. I think I'm good. This one's all you. I ended up picking Honora and Nickel Boys. Um, she's gonna watch the rest on her own for the most part, unless I find something really interesting. Dune 2 seems a little interesting to me. Never seen part
Yeah.
one, so I'm not gonna do 6 hours of a commitment. Have you watched any of these?
Okay, so here's where I'm a failure when it comes to the Oscars. I love watching the Oscars. I truly do. I love the speeches. I love seeing, what they're wearing, all that fun stuff, and then all the award winners. I actually watch the movies after the Oscars. I'm like the
Oh,
cheat code of like, oh, which one was the best picture? Which one did you, the best actor award or whatever. I love seeing that after, and then I'll pick a few to watch. So I don't watch any prior. I feel like a loser. I watch all of the Netflix, Amazon Prime shows, but I never get to watch some of the movies until after the award show. But I look forward to it. I like it. I really do enjoy it. Is it this Sunday or is it next Sunday?
I think it's this weekend because she's trying to like marathon it this week. So
All right.
I think it'll be
Well,
this Sunday.
full recap. Can't wait to hear it. And yeah, it should be pretty good. The sun is shining, the snow is melting, and we are getting Bengals news as we're slowly approaching free agency, a couple weeks away from free agency, a week from the NFL franchise tag deadline. And that is obviously newsworthy. Duke Tobin and Zach Taylor are down and over in Indianapolis, and they were talking with the media, national and local media. And I don't know about you, Mike. I don't know if you had a chance to listen to the press conference or see some of the quotes and tweets coming from the recap of it. Duke Tobin sounded a little bit different when hearing him talk about this. Over the last few years, 2 years ago, I remember that famous quote of, hey, if you want a wide receiver, go get your own. There are guys really, big on keeping T. Higgins. Last year, not so optimistic, talking about the pieces of the pie and how that was all going to fit. I think today, listening to him, he was even asked about the franchise tag, about possibly using that for T. Higgins. And he pretty much was like, we know it's there. I know I have a franchise tag in my pocket, but long term, long term, long term. Just kept saying that about T. Higgins, said it's the perfect marriage, and really wants him to be here. Also mentioned want to make Jamar Chase the highest paid non-quarterback position. And then obviously Trey Hendrickson was brought up. He did talk about the cap situation for the Bengals. He said, hey, it's healthy, and praise some of that small dead money that we're seeing. I'm sure we'll see some more moves over the next few weeks when it comes to some of the guys they're replacing. Al Golden received praise on how the defense is going to look. And they even ended with some praise on Dax Hill, because obviously before the injury, he was really getting confident in his role. We'll see where he lands as far as positional group next year. But I was really, maybe it was because I was waiting to hear from Duke Tobin, but I was impressed with some of his confidence, and maybe that was putting more pressure on the Bengals front office, something that they needed to do.
Yeah. Um, I'm glad you listen to these. You're more in tune with this. I see a couple of clips. I did see a couple people say they felt like Duke was, a little more revved up this year. Knows that it's an important year. It's been an important year for multiple years now, and they failed multiple years. So
Yeah.
hopefully this is met with the success that the urgency necessitate. Oh, is necessary.
Yeah,
Use that phrase.
I like it.
I could read it. I could read it, but I cannot say it right now. But yeah, I found the Dax Hill stuff interesting, although I think most people were saying like it sounded like at corner, so he's not moving back to safety wherever Al wants him at corner, which makes sense. He's more needed there, I think, if they are keeping Geno. Maybe a draft pick gets involved in that safety mix. Maybe Jordan Battle is guaranteed his role. Maybe he's not. Maybe nobody's guaranteed the role at the safety spot. But corner, you've got Cam Taylor-Britt, Dax Hill, and DJ Turner. unless they bring back Mike Hilton,
Yeah.
none of those spots I feel like are, guaranteed. So 3 open spots, and he can play all 3. Really, it's 2 boundary outside guys and an inside guy, but he can play both those positions. Played a lot of inside in college. Thought he looked pretty good outside this year for the Bengals. So I find that interesting. Also found a lot of people found the other part interesting was the pass rusher. Did you see that clip?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
did.
He really hammered get off an explosion,
Hmm.
be able to set up your moves that way. Also mentioned having a plan and a secondary move, which I think people hung on a lot, which he did mention. And I think it is important. I think it's good he's mentioning that because a lot of people could point to Miles Murphy. He didn't really have a plan coming out of college, and he's still developing his secondary move for when an offensive lineman tries to match his speed. But he went back to get off like 3 times in that. It's like, yeah, that's the same Duke Tobin, to be honest, though. Like it's speed, like the ability to fly off the ball. Never mentioned size, so that's interesting. That's the one though that I'll believe when I see it. I'll believe that he's moved away from size when they make the draft pick. But the get off was the most important. He mentioned at the end. He just says like, a tackle can just sit on you if you can't get off the ball. So that is still, I think, his priority 1. But it's interesting because does that remove the Bengals fans' nightmare of Shamar Stewart at that pick, because he is all size, measurables, and athletic ability, and doesn't yet have any of the technical savvy and experience playing the position to turn that into. He wins sometimes with his athletic ability, but he doesn't have the technical savvy and experience to turn those into production. He's beating the tackle, but he can't finish it in a sack or really even a high quality type of pressure, just pushing the tackle back, make the quarterback feel him and move off his spot. We'll see. I would still say I think Stewart is heavily in the running if he's there at the pick. I don't think he'll be there, to be honest. I just think guys that are 290 pounds that move like that, they get drafted. So, like big edge guys like that, it's hard to find. So I think he gets drafted, but I think he'll be high on their board until I'm proven wrong.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I love or hate him, but I am saying that he is very much the Bengals type in previous seasons.
Yeah, I want to get to some more guys that we're going to hear about the NFL Combine in just a moment, but there were some more quotes that I really felt encouraged, and I mentioned Al Golden, but he just mentioned Al Golden, alignment several times, but he also just said a quote that I really feel like a lot of fans wanted to hear because it was what Lou was crushed for last year, and it was, he's going to play his best players. It might be a rookie, it might be a veteran, but it doesn't matter how many years you really have been on this team. He's just going to put the best guys out there. And I think that's what we, really wanted to see the majority of last year with this defense because it struggled. And, maybe the other guys would have failed, but you wanted to see more of the development from that. And he just received a lot of praise from Duke Tobin. And I felt like that was really encouraging because defensively, when Duke, started the press conference, he talked about the failure of last year and not having that opportunity to fight for a championship and just the failures on the defensive side. And that's what they're really attacking this year. It really just feels like he's like, they're going to go defense in the first at 17. And I wouldn't be surprised if they go back defense in the second round too, because he knows what a failure that was on the defensive side of the ball. So I was a little encouraged with what he said about Al Golden. And then he also praised Joe Burrow because obviously Joe Burrow was making his media rounds and saying all the guys that he wanted to bring back. And he goes, I agree with my quarterback. He's like, I want all of these guys signed. And I think that was just really telling to say, I support him. I have these conversations with Joe Burrow. So everything Joe Burrow was saying is what Duke Tobin said. And I think if you go back and you watch it, you really feel like, I know we can crush Duke Tobin on a lot of things. It could be draft picks, and it hasn't been great over the last few years. It's the reason they're going to have this opportunity to sign some of their big time contracts to some of the guys who have already been on the roster. But I think it was more of like, hey, Katie and Troy, you're putting these contracts together. I'm putting the pressure on you. I'm saying I want T. Higgins on this team. Put T. Higgins on this team. And I I don't know. I was encouraged by it, but of course, it's all just words, and we got to see the actions over the next few weeks.
Different than his pie analogy from last
Yeah.
year. When asked if he'd want to sign T. Higgins, he's like, "There's only so much pie to go around," and now it's, "Yeah, I do." So more reason to think that they're actually going to re-sign T. Higgins to an extension. Jamar Chase is inevitable, and I think that showed in there too, where he just said, like, "Yeah, he's going to be the highest paid not quarterback in the NFL." It's like, yeah, we know what we're in for. But the T. Higgins one's more interesting. Trey Hendrickson, I don't believe, did he say anything about Trey?
Obviously, it wasn't the T. Jamar type of conversation. It wasn't the got to have him on the roster, but want him here. Those conversations are continuing. And mentioned that he is under contract for 2025, but you do hope that he is one of the three included. It really felt like they want to get these three contracts done before free agency begins, which is 2 weeks now, less than 2 weeks away, and it technically starts. So you really got to get it going because they want to see how much money they'll have for the other guys. Not that they won't have enough money, and he mentioned that, but you want to see how you're going to build the rest of your team after these contracts are done. So I didn't, you could get it maybe a different way, but I felt like it was more like Jamar T also mentioned Trey as being like one of the big threes that you want to get done.
Did he mention
Gesicki? I heard Zach Taylor was asked about it, but it really didn't. I didn't feel like there was a lot of confidence there. So
that's a tier one free agent to
no,
to them?
No, there was not a tier one conversation. And again, this is how I'm listening to it. It really just felt like maybe Mike Gesicki maybe his number's a little higher than they want to go. And obviously I don't blame him. We're always pro player, go get your bag. But I don't know. I don't really feel there's a lot of confidence about him, and even Mike Hilton was another one. I didn't really feel like there was a lot of.
Mike Hilton, I feel that's a tough one because I feel like one, I mean, Lou loved him and Lou's gone.
Yep.
Two, isn't he 30 plus now? That would.
Do you think, and Mike Hilton has had great, I mean, he's been one of their, I really enjoyed him as a free agent signing, but.
Yeah, he's 30. Just want to look at him. He's going to be 31 soon.
Would you put him in the category of people that they're like, okay, we're going to move on from, and I would say maybe even BJ Hill?
Yeah, I think you move on from. I'm torn. I mean, BJ Hill's tough because, like, can you get him back at a pretty good rate, at a pretty good contract? Oh. Because you've got two DTs right now, neither are vets. I don't think you feel good about going into next season with that. Mike Hilton, I feel like you got more guys to replace that position, but I also think that Mike Hilton has been so integral to what the Bengals have done over the past 4 years that it feels hard to go like, yeah, move on. Even if your brain is like, yeah, it's smart to move on because Dax Hill, DJ Turner, Cam Taylor-Britt, you could figure out three starting guys in that group. And one of them, I think Dax Hill's best fit is the best at the slot out of those three. I think DJ Turner can play it. I don't project Cam Taylor-Britt to be there just in a lateral quickness type of issue. Turner has actually kind of struggled in the slot and he's been better outside, but does Dax Hill just win the outside job again like he did last year? So that's where you have like a little bit of pause with the Mike Hilton thing. Is like, he'll be solid. Yeah. He was solid again last year. You also know if Al Golden is going to increase up the man coverage, he's not as much of a fit. And I think they know about the coverage stuff too, because they were not playing him on every third down. They were not on obvious pass downs, and against pass heavy teams, he wasn't always the one getting onto the field, even though he's a great run defender, great blitzer. They know the pass coverage is just limited with him in there. He's not as spry as he once was, and he wasn't really all that spry to begin with. He was more physical and a great football player. So my brain says move on. My heart says, what's the harm? Keep him. Just let him play a role. BJ Hill, it feels if you don't keep BJ Hill, you have to go out and make a splash in free agency. I know fans are going to yell guard, 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 and like you need to go get some guys that can play guard because what you've got is abhorrent. But I think when it comes to the defensive tackle room, it's almost as bad, and you need a rotation. It's like at least with guard, you only need 2 guys. For defensive tackle, you want to be 4 guys deep that all play, maybe even 5. So if you keep BJ, I think you got to go probably sign a guy, maybe a low end guy, maybe just you just go sign Roy Lopez, Adam Butler type. And if you don't keep BJ, I think you got to go out there and make at least a decent splash. And last year they tried to do the let's not sign our home guy, let's go make a splash. And that splash was a belly flop. It was not a beautiful dive into the free agency market. As Rankins did not play very much, and when he did, he wasn't very effective. So I wonder if that weighs in on them too. So I would say I think BJ Hill's more likely to be here next year. What do you think? Do you think either of them are here? Both? One?
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point, which is kind of where are we going to see Dax? Obviously, he's going to be in the secondary in a cornerback role. And just really what will that look like? And I think that's extremely important into their plans right now. He's obviously coming off the ACL injury. What will he adapt to better off of playing in the secondary with recovery from that injury? But I think I would lean towards BJ Hill too. I don't think he's going to be taking a discount to come here. He could go in the open market and get some money. So I'm in between on that. But I think you've got to bring one of them back. Obviously, there are 2 different position groups, but I think you've got to say either BJ or Mike Hilton and making that move. And it really feels like it'd probably be BJ Hill. One more thing I want to mention, because he was asked about Jermaine Pratt, and he pretty much, Jake Lisco, I feel like said it best when he was translating it. Hey, Jermaine can come to me at any time. He doesn't need to put it out there, but also to GMs, if you want to call us, he is available via trade. With that outlook, I would be surprised if Jermaine Pratt is back on this team next year. Not because he wanted to be traded or anything like that. I just think they probably went to him and said, you're gonna either take a pay cut or we're gonna cut you. And
yeah, you're saying that they didn't do the Jermaine's under contract for 1 more year, so
no, they didn't do the Trey Hendrickson. No, it was definitely not that vibe. It was like, you know what, my door's always open. You can always come to me if you have a, So I think it was we're gonna either cut your pay or we're going to cut you. So of course he's like, I want to make that same amount of money. Trade me to another team so I still get my money I was going to get from the Bengals. So we'll see what that looks like. But obviously they have a lot of moves that they're going to be making. And you mentioned Sheldon Rankins, and just want to say this really quickly. Obviously finding out, I know Jeremy Fowler put out what he was dealing with, and that seems very scary for anybody. They're all humans first before football players. So hopefully Sheldon is doing a lot better. The Bengals decided to move on from him. No surprise. Really, I think that obviously opens up money and more cap space than they even needed for 2025. So that was a smart move. But all the best to him.
Yeah.
That's all I got.
Hopefully he has an NFL career still. That's what I think.
Yeah.
Hopefully his illness wasn't so bad that it sapped, made him drop a bunch of weight, sapped anything from him. So I don't want him to not be in the NFL anymore, but
didn't want him to be on the Bengals anymore.
No,
wanted him.
It didn't work, and I was excited about him. Never translated.
Yep, never worked out, and wish him the best. Hopefully he lands on another team and all is well with him. But yeah, that's about it from the Combine. It was kind of crazy because they're at the Combine to watch all these college players, and every question I felt like was asked, what about your current roster? What about this player? What about this player? And it's because they don't get to talk to Duke Tobin pretty much once a year. And I think like we hear from him right before draft week. He'll talk to the media, but there was just a lot of questions about the current situation of the Cincinnati Bengals. And I think a lot of people had questions on all of the contract extensions. But when it comes to Combine week, obviously this is when you start to see players who are going to test. You're going to get their measurables. You're going to hear stories that are coming out about some of these guys. And if they're going to drop, if they're going to be available in the first round. And for the Cincinnati Bengals, I truly do feel like this, Mike, I will be a little surprised if they go another route. And everything's really on the table when you think about position groups, especially on the defensive side. But I just feel like it's going to be defensive tackle. And I'm not really going out on a limb here to say that. And I know that would be a surprise for them in the first round, but I feel like you're looking at that defensive tackle group. And I know when you go back and you watch some tape, and there are plenty of guys who are getting mocked to the Cincinnati Bengals at a defensive tackle. Who are you watching for at the combine over the next few days?
I think there's the good and the bad. You're watching to see how good Walter Nolan's athleticism is. Does that put him into play at 17? Does it put him in play well above 17? Don't know. Kenneth Grant, 340-pound, played a lot of nose tackle at Michigan, probably where he's projected to go in the NFL. Another guy you kind of watch, you go like, I think that one is more volatile. Does he test like a bad athlete? And then you go, well, that's not a round one guy. Mm-hmm. Or does he test like a surprisingly good Jordan Davis type of nose tackle athlete? And then he's in play at 17. You work your way down the list. Derek Harmon and Tyleik Williams. I think Tyleik Williams is another one. Sneaky important to see how he tests, because you don't know if he's a super athlete or not. He's pretty big. I thought he was pretty athletic, and he was a little bigger than I expected when I went and saw his listed weight. I think the weigh-ins are also important for a guy like TJ Sanders, who's listed, I think, under 290 pounds. If he comes in real low 280s, that becomes like are you even a defensive tackle type of question? Or if he comes in and he's 300 plus, does that move him up? Because size matters at the defensive tackle position. And obligatory Jamari Caldwell reference. Won't go round one, but I want to see how fast that big boy moves. It's like a flying meatball. Yeah. So I think if you're for the Bengals, you're really watching Walter Nolan and Kenneth Grant closely. Mm-hmm. And from there, I'm just going to double check myself, make sure I'm not missing anybody. From there, the next on consensus are like Derek Harmon, Tyleik Williams, and TJ Sanders. But all those guys are real late round one, round two type of guys by consensus and by my grade too. So you're watching them, but I don't know about for round one. I think more so for round two. And then even a guy like Deone Walker, not my favorite guy that I watched, just his film, but he's a mammoth human. I think he's going to weigh in probably 350 plus, and he can move. So I think that's going to be big. And the other guy, I do need to mention people that I wasn't the biggest fan of too, because they're on the table. Yeah. I don't think round one, but Omar Norman Lott, another guy's like incredible mover, incredible at moving. I think he's going to blow up the combine. But what's the weigh-in? Does he weigh in under 280 pounds? And then you have questions. Same with like Anus Peebles, and there's a bunch of guys. Even a guy that could be a sneaky riser like Darius Alexander. It's a deep defensive tackle draft. And to me, I don't think even the Derek Harmons are that separated from a guy like Darius Alexander. I think it's all fairly close in that range. You're looking at guys that I think are starters in the NFL, or at least high-end role players. If Darius Alexander tests like an elite athlete, Derek Harmon tests surprisingly poor, does that vault Alexander up to, early round two, maybe even late round one buzz, and drop Harmon down to late round two type of buzz? I don't know. So combine seems to move people, and a lot of times moves them more than you would expect. For like, you watch them, you go like, he tested like an elite athlete, but you don't see it on the field type of deal. So I'm surprised you think it's definitely defensive tackle.
Oh, and watch them go safety or something like that, and I'll be like, oh my goodness. I feel like you need to get a game change wrecking player. You look at these teams in the playoffs, and they have that. And the Bengals need that on the defensive side of the ball. And obviously they need defensive tackle. They need defensive tackle starters. They need defensive tackle depth. And I think just getting that guy would be huge for who I believe in Al Golden. I know I mentioned some of Duke Tobin's comments, but I feel like the development of some of these guys when it comes to the rookie class of coming from college back to the NFL is going to be absolutely huge for him as a defensive coordinator. and who they pick at 17. I hope he gets a voice on draft night. Obviously, the front office does play a huge role in that, Zach Taylor, too, and his coaching staff. But I hope Al Golden is someone that they listen to, because he's obviously very familiar with what these college guys look like when he just left Notre Dame. So for me personally, I'm going to be a little bit surprised if it isn't a defensive tackle, but we'll stay with the defensive side of the ball. Edge, still on the board. Wouldn't be surprised if they decide, hey, you know what, we are going edge. When you look at some of the edge positional groups and guys at the combine, is there anybody else that you would like to mention that you would be watching out for the next few weeks that could be a possibility at 17?
Yeah. So James Pierce will be interesting to see his way in. I think he's going to test like an elite athlete, but I mean, he's listed at 245. That is just not on the Bengals board. Mm-hmm. Does he get to 250? Does he get to 255? 255 puts him on the Bengals board to me, because I believe, Jordan Willis was 255 and they drafted him within the first 4 rounds. Michael Williams and Shamar Stewart, 2 guys that I think a lot of Bengals fans don't want because they don't have productive data profiles, but if they go out there and they test like the elite of the elite athlete, you start seeing that 9.9 RAS type of score. That probably puts him in play at 17. I think Mike Green's off the board from the off the field stuff. He should test really well. Nick Scourton, a sneaky one. I think, he's got the size, 6'4", 280. I think he's got some movement ability to him. I think he could be in play at 17. He's less than 21 years old on draft day. He's still going to be 20 years old. So there's a lot to be interested in. And he comes with a higher floor, I think, than Shamar Stewart, just in terms of what he does as a pass rusher. He has a little bit of a plan, but a little bit less freaky as well, even though he's 280 pounds as well. I just think Stewart's got a little bit more athleticism to him. There's some guys that are going to like blow the doors off. Princely Uman Mylan, Josiah Stewart might. Kyle Kennard probably will do some high-end athleticism stuff. But I don't know how many of those guys they're interested in, because I think all 3 of those guys are under 250 pounds. Actually, Princely labeled at 264, so he might be in play for round 2. Jack Sawyer, I feel like obligatory mention. How bad's the athleticism? Is it going to be elite? Is it going to be average? Because watching, I didn't think it was bad, but I thought he looked like an average NFL starting athlete. I didn't see like a high-end NFL starting athlete. I think that's one you got to watch. And JT Tuamaleo, just mentioned him as well. I think he'll test a little bit better. Landon Jackson also is a Bengals type of player in terms of size, 273 pounds. So watch him. But if you're talking about round 1 specifically, I think you watch Pierce, Williams, and Stewart and Scourton. I don't think they'll take Walker as an edge rusher. He's 245, and Carter will be gone. I mean, he's the consensus number 2 player in this draft. So
I wish it would drop just a little bit. Just a little bit.
No, actually, I hope he goes 1, because, Travis Hunter's got to go 1. The Browns pick 2. I don't want either one of those players going to Cleveland.
I feel like the Browns are going to go Cam Ward. I truly do. I do. I think they're going to go. I hope they go quarterback. I'm going to be honest with you. When I think about,
I think there's 2 really good players in this draft. I haven't watched enough of either one, but just in the glimpses I've watched, I'm like, yeah, both those guys are going to be really good NFL players, huh?
Yeah, I don't want Carter near the AFC North. So I hope the Titans stay at number 1 and say it's tough. I wish the Browns were at like 4 or something. Being right where they're at, it's like Travis Hunter, Carter's going to be there, but I just hope the Titans stay at 1 and they're going to get a non-quarterback. I truly don't think that they're going to go quarterback in this draft, and you just get the best player available and you hope for next year. But I said defensive tackle. You mentioned you mentioned defensive tackle and edge prospects that you're going to be watching for in the combine. You were surprised I said defensive tackle. What position group are you thinking that's going to be the Bengals?
I think it just I don't think defensive tackle is any more likely than guard. I think guard is just as likely as defensive tackle. And I think the case there is defensive tackle's deep, because round 2, round 3, you can still get guys that look like starters, I think. For guard, I'm not sure that fits in the same way, at least just not as many. You just look at the consensus. For top 50 players, there's currently 4 guards and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 defensive tackles. It's just there's double the amount of consensus top 50 players, and
Okay.
then it's true as you go further down as well. Some of these people that are listed as guards probably play tackle or might play tackle. A lot of them played tackle in college. So I think what you're looking for in terms of round one guard, you're going to see similar to what I said about Sawyer with my guy Tyler Booker. What's the athleticism? It's not going to be elite. It's probably not going to be elite. Sometimes these guys are able to really test for these drills. That's part of this. It's like your combine testing isn't always the greatest indicator of your actual athleticism because guys just really learn the drills. And even though they don't look like an elite athlete on the field, they know the exact amount of steps on the short shuttle and the 3-cone. They've practiced it because practicing for the drill is also a big part of this. Guy I think of with that, it was Zion Johnson. I remember I watched him. I was like, this is not a very good athlete. And he had like a 9.9 RAS. I was like, okay, I don't think so. Why doesn't he move like that? So that's where I feel with Tyler Booker is, what is the athleticism? Is it good? Is it average? If it's worse, he probably doesn't get picked at 17. You're probably looking at maybe hoping he falls to 49. But I think he's a good player. But then the opposite side of that is, how good is the Armand Membu athleticism? Is he going to blow the doors off, or is he going to be just pretty good? Could he disappoint, just be like an average athlete? I think all those are possibilities. I don't think anybody else is in play at 17. I mean, the next guy on the consensus board is Donovan Jackson. I don't think they would do that. I mean, maybe he gets a bump from the playoffs and whatnot. I think he'll test pretty good. I'm not sure if he'll test at the highest level. You look for with guard too. It's been talked about a lot, but is that short shuttle and 3-cone. Just want to see how they move laterally. And that's a big one with Tyler Booker. Want to see, I know you're not going to blow the doors off the 40. It doesn't look like he has a ton of lateral agility on film, but what is it? Is it average? Is it pretty good? Or is it bad? I think that's what you're looking for with Booker. And then with Membu, does he blow the doors off the combine and probably get taken before pick 17 if he does that, because he's a tackle as well. He's a little shorter, but he's got 34-inch arms, and he's not pigeonholed into guard the same way Booker is. So a team like the Dolphins or the 49ers might be able to take him before he gets to 17 because they have a need, and being able to play a premium position will move him up. So you look for those two for the offensive line. Anybody deeper? I don't know a ton about. I haven't watched enough of the guys later, but Tate Ratledge to me feels like another. If he's going to test, I'm not 100% sure because he did miss a lot of the year with an injury. What is that? What does that athleticism look like? Because it's similar to Booker, where I don't think he moves all that well on film. And I want to see Marcus Mbo testing, but to me, he's a tackle. I think that's a debate that's being had. Some people even say center. To me, tackle, but we'll see. He kind of reminds me a bit of like a Zach Tom type of player, where he's light. The anchor's not the best, but he does a lot of good stuff at tackle. But if you're a Bengals fan, you just care about pick 17, Tyler Booker, Armand Membu. See how they test. You're kind of hoping for just good, just like 8.5 RAS for Membu if you want him at 17. And for Booker, if he hits 8.5 RAS, I don't know if he makes it to 17 either, but you're probably hoping for that too. Just want to see him be a better athlete. Maybe there's some potential athleticism that he's not playing with currently.
Yeah, I mean, goodness, I wouldn't be mad at 17 if they got someone to protect Joe Burrow. And obviously we know how they feel about paying the interior guards. And I think that would be awesome. You'd want to hit on that draft pick. So obviously a big week. I'm not against it. We'll go line, defensive line, offensive line, possibilities at 17. I think it's still a possibility. We're 2 months out. I wouldn't be surprised because I know how much the Bengals value draft picks. And since they only have 6 right now, as of now, I wouldn't be surprised if they move back a couple spots too, to like 19 or 20, depending on how the board is looking at that moment to gain another pick. So we'll see what that looks like on draft night. But Mike, what do you have coming up over on Cincinnati Bengals Talk?
Going to be putting out a Tyler Booker article this week because I'm going to do one on Booker, one on Membu. I think they're the two guys at 17 for the offensive line that they could take. And if I was going to predict which one people are more excited about after this week, it'll probably be Membu. So I'll
Okay.
get the Booker one out now and then ride the wave of excitement if it exists. Guys that look like pretty good athletes don't always test like pretty good athletes, or at least they don't test like the elite athletes on combine day. So maybe Membu doesn't break the 9 RAS and nobody cares, but I'm gonna make that bet because I feel like it's more likely that people are gonna be a little soured on Booker after the combine. We'll see. Hoping that he tests well, but I'm kind of expecting him to test more like a average athlete than a great one.
Mims in 2024, Mimbu in 2025. I love it. Let's see what the Cincinnati Bengals do. I cannot wait for draft week to be here, but we are 1 week away from franchise tag deadline. We'll get more updates when it comes to T. Higgins. The Bengals will have to either tag him or extend him before free agency begins, and obviously before the deadline is on next Tuesday. Make sure you're checking out Mike's work. Really great past articles on some of these prospects to look forward to. His Al Golden piece from a few months ago, that's fantastic, over on Cincinnati Bengals Talk. Give him a follow, Bengals_Sands over on Twitter. You can follow me at Lindsay Patterson. Thank you for listening to It's Always Game Day in Cincinnati.